Hello, this is Mrs. Reed, and today we are going to be talking about polynomials. So the whole front side of our notes today is just some basic vocabulary and definitions that you guys need to know with polynomials, since this is an introduction to what you guys will see in algebra. So a polynomial is an expression that contains numbers, variables, and operations. So you guys will see on the backside when we start doing some example problems what those expressions look like. When you are writing or computing with polynomials, you guys always have to write them in standard form. So that means that these are terms that are written in descending order based on the exponents. So for example, we have an x to the fifth, x to the third, x squared, x, and no x. So when you write polynomials in standard form, you are always writing them in order based off of their exponents. And it's always going to be attached with a variable. Now, if we have a polynomial with like different variables involved, so if it's like negative 3a squared b squared plus a 4ab to the fourth, okay, you're still always writing them in order based off of their exponents, and you do it in alphabetical order. So since your a comes before b, you always want to make sure that your a is before the b's in your polynomial, and you're still classifying them based off of their exponents. So you're still writing them in order, in descending order. When we say degree, that is the exponent on the variable. Remember that constant terms have a degree of 0, so that means that they don't have any variables attached to them. So like in this example, negative 9 was a constant, so technically it does have a variable, but it's to the 0 power, which means that that is just 1. The degree of a polynomial is the largest degree in the polynomial. If there is more than one variable, all that you're doing is you're just adding the exponents together. When we talk about the leading coefficient, this is the coefficient of the first term when the polynomial is written in standard form. And then we also talk about different polynomials that have different expressions. So a monomial is a polynomial with only one term. A binomial is a polynomial with two terms. And then a trinomial is a polynomial with three terms. So hopefully you guys know that when we talk about mono, bi, and tri, that is your indicator that mono is one polynomial, bi is two polynomials, and tri is three polynomials. So lots of definitions here on the front page, so please pause the video when you need to pause it to write all these down, but I'm going to go ahead and go on to the back side. Alright, so the back side, we are just looking at different polynomials, and we are just going to make sure that we know what it represents, okay? So again, a polynomial consists of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. It consists of variables with exponents on them, and it can even represent just a normal constant like this one is here with the negative 3, okay? So remember guys, degree means the exponents within our polynomial. So as you guys can see, negative 3 is just a constant. It does not have any exponents. So this means that it would have a 0 degree. And number of terms, well, negative 3 is just one term. So instead of just writing 1 for number of terms, we know that this is a monomial. So if it has one term, we say it's monomial. Alright, so next one, so now we just have negative x plus 1. So again, this is a polynomial. Number of degree, so again, you're looking at your variable with its exponent. Remember, if it doesn't have an exponent, it technically just has like an imaginary 1 up here. So in this case, our variable with the highest exponent is just 1. So that is going to be our degree. And then looking at the number of terms, so terms are everything separated by addition, subtraction, multiplication, division signs. So in this case, we now have 2 terms. So instead of writing 2, we are going to say that this is a binomial. Okay, looking at the next one, so now we have x squared plus 3. So again, your degree is going to come from the highest exponent on that variable. So this time it's squared, and that means that our degree is 2. And then again, looking at the number of terms separated by our operations, I have an x squared and a 3. So that means I have 2 terms, so this is a binomial. All right, looking at the next one, looking at D. So notice how this time we have multiple exponents and multiple variables with multiple terms, okay? So again, your degree is coming from the exponent with the highest exponent available. So in this case, I have a 3, a 2, and a 1. So my highest exponent is 3. So that means that my degree here is going to be 3. And then this time, so notice how we have, talking about terms, I have 4 terms here that are separated by addition and subtraction signs. So we are not talking about what the 4 terms is. So when you guys have more than 3, we just want you to write polynomial. Alright guys, and then the last one here, so again, when we're talking about degrees, you're looking at the highest exponent. So in this case, our degree is 4. And then this time I have 3 terms that are separated by addition signs. So we say that this is a trinomial. Okay, so that is just identifying your different polynomials and what exists within those polynomials. So now let's go down to writing them in standard form and talking about a leading coefficient. So again, when you are writing polynomials in a standard form, you always have to make sure that you are going in alphabetical order. And your exponents, you're always leading with the highest exponent with that variable. So for example here, I have an x at 3x to the 4th, and 11x to the 3rd, and a 9. So my variable with the highest exponent is with the term 3x to the 4th. Okay, so since that variable had the highest exponent, that is what you're going to start with in your standard form. Okay, so that took care of that one. So now let's go on to our next highest exponent attached to the x. So in this case, I see an 11x to the 3rd. Now you have to be careful though with this, because remember, minus signs are really just negative signs. So you can't write plus 11x to the 3rd here because there was a minus sign in front of it. So when you are transferring this term over to the other side on standard form, you still have to include that minus sign. Okay, so we have 3x to the 4th minus an 11x to the 3rd. Now again, we're going to find our next variable to the highest power. So I have an x, or a -9. So I do have a variable still. So this is to the first power. So that means that my next term is going to be that plus x. And then I can't leave out this -9 here, so I'm just going to attach that to the end. So standard form of this polynomial would be 3x to the 4th minus 11x to the third plus x minus 9. And then your leading coefficient, guys, so remember coefficients are attached to variables. You want the number that came first, that is a coefficient in your standard form. So first number that came first, that is a coefficient, so it's attached to the variable, is this 3. So we're going to say that our leading coefficient here is 3. Alright, so next one. So I have negative 4x squared plus 9x minus 10 plus x cubed. So again, when you're writing this in standard form, you're always going in alphabetical order, and you must go by their exponents. So my variable with the highest exponent is this plus x cubed, so I'm going to start with that in my standard form. Then my next highest exponent is this x squared, so I'm going to attach it with this negative 4x squared. My next highest exponent is going to be with this x, because that's to the first power, so this will be plus 9x. And then we do have to include this last term here, so the minus 10, and that will be at the end. Alright, so this time our leading coefficient, so number that is attached to the variable, is so notice how this x cubed does not have a number out in front of it, but remember guys, we can technically put an imaginary 1 here, so technically there is a coefficient attached to that x, and that's the number that we would want for our leading coefficient. So our leading coefficient here is going to be attached to that x third, which is going to be 1. Alright, so then the next one, so I have a negative 5 plus an x squared. Again, my x squared is going to need to come first in my standard form. So it's going to be x squared. And then I do just need to attach that negative 5 at the end. So you can put plus negative 5, or you can just put minus 5. And then again, guys, our leading coefficient is going to be attached to the variable. Again, if it doesn't have one, remember you can put that imaginary 1 there. So our leading coefficient is again going to be 1. Alright, moving on to the next two. So how about you guys go ahead and pause the video and then press play when you are ready. I want you guys to try D and E on your own. So again, go ahead and pause the video and then press play when you're ready for the answers. Okay, so for D, so again, you're going in alphabetical order with your highest exponent. So in this case, you guys should have started with that negative 2a cubed, because remember, a minus sign is really just a negative sign. Then your next term should have been this 3a squared, so plus 3a squared. And then your last term should have been this plus a. Okay, and then for your leading coefficient, again, coefficient's the number attached to variables. So in this case, your leading coefficient would be negative 2. Alright guys, and then the last one, so my highest exponent with the variable was this 7x to the fourth, so that's what you guys should have started with. Then your next highest term is this x squared, and it's a negative x squared. And then your last one would be that negative 3x, so minus 3x. Okay, and then your leading coefficient this time, so you have your 7 attached with the x, so that means that 7 is going to be your leading coefficient. And again, guys, I just want to point out one more thing that we talked about on the front side of notes. When there's more than one variable in the polynomial, remember you're going in alphabetical order to write it in standard form. So for example, if I gave you 7x to the 5th y third minus 8x to the 6th y plus a 4x squared y to the 6th, since x comes before y in the alphabet, you are still writing your polynomial in standard form based off of the x. So for example, the x with the highest power was this x to the 6. So that means that this term would have to go first, and since there's a minus sign, that should be a negative. Then you look at your next x power that's the highest, and that is this x to the 5th. So that's why this term would go next. And then your last term would be this x squared. Okay, so even though the y had the highest power in these, and a lot of students would think that this term would go first. Again, though, you don't want to do that because you're going off of alphabetical order. So you're not looking at the y's when you have an x available. So you want to make sure that you put the x's in their descending order first. Okay? So just a quick reminder for that, but that is pretty much today's lesson. So today was just a introduction to polynomials, making sure that you guys know the difference between a monomial, binomial, and trinomial, knowing what a polynomial is, knowing your degrees, knowing your standard forms, knowing your leading coefficients. So just a lot of stuff within polynomials. So if you guys have any more questions or any questions at all, please just let me know and I can try to answer it the best I can.